All right, perfect. I think we are live. Let's see. All right, cameras are running. Yo, welcome everybody. Joan, Julia, Diego. Oh my god, already 30 people. Welcome everyone. Today we have PsychOut, Rexian, Shappy, Jake, and we were supposed to have 12 too, but he's running at the moment. So yeah, he's enjoying life. And as you guys know, we are going to discuss Sargon, if he's good or not. Because on my last video, you guys you guys humiliated me saying that Sargon is crazy or super good or something like that. So yeah, we will discuss that today. And I have a few questions, but of course we will go for freestyle and everything. And then you're gonna ask your questions. We are gonna answer the viewer questions. So Psych, welcome. Rexian, welcome. Shappy, Duke, guys, welcome. Now I want to start with Duke because he is the infantry master. So while he's answering his questions, you can also think about the answers. So I'm giving you that extra time to think about an answer. So Duke, the first question, are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So is this a buff? Is a Sargon change? Is this a buff or a nerf?
Yeah, so basically what obviously what they did is they took away your ability to stack before your first skill cycle. So even though he's doing 5 instances of skill damage, that doesn't come in until around turn 9 or 10. So it's not very useful for your first skill cycle, other than a few procs that can do it beforehand, and then you're basically just going to start stacking for your next skill cycle. So even though it improves your reach, especially if you have a commander with him that's 3 or even 5 March AoE, I would say definitely less value in a lineup just because the stacking comes slower and a little less consistent.
Hmm. And Shappy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Duke on that too. I do think this is definitely more of a nerf than a buff.
Hmm.
You do want that to be stacking as much as possible, and you are kind of losing that. I'm also kind of curious how it works with that fourth skill, in terms of the removal of those stacks.
Hmm.
You may have actually gotten that earlier and lost out a little bit on that.
Yeah, true. Rexy? Oh, I.
To really invest into it.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
perfect. I, I,
oh,
I wasn't
can you
hearing
hear me?
you, but now it's perfect. Okay.
Okay, good. So for everyone who really invests to him as a kingdom, I
Hmm.
think he will actually bring a lot of value, and that comes in. I think will come to show in the Osiris League next time, because if everybody got one in that murder ball where everybody full sense marches to die,
Yeah.
all of the AoE, depending on the pairing that he does, is going to stack on everybody. And, well, I think that side who has a lot of Sargons will clap a side who doesn't have a lot of Sargons. However, for your average player that is, low, medium spender, might not be the best for your 5 to maybe 7 March, depending on what you're up to
Hmm.
and what seed you're in. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, thank you. Psych?
Yeah, I think I agree with Rexian that I think that, and we look at the sort of mid fights in Osiris League, that it's a buff for that part.
Hmm.
I think it's probably a nerf from a sort of an individual this one March. Although I don't know, do we actually know? Did they actually change it, or did they just do a bad job translating and it was always this way the whole time? We just didn't understand.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. It's possible. What do you guys think?
Pretty sure it was a mistranslation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably. Yeah.
another
Yeah,
another misleading.
I think this was how it was designed, and obviously, like the translation was just bad because it was always this way in the Korean version.
I mean, there has to be a way. Sorry, there has to be a reason why they didn't give him an instant active skill. It's a 5 damage skill. I mean, where's the synergy then? Because you are releasing a commander in almost 2023 with damage over time, so there should have been a synergy, but now we have it. But I think, in my opinion, is like
Yeah,
when I think about debuffs, this might sound stupid, but when I think about it, I feel like I think about boxing, right? those debuffs with the normal attack is like, jab, 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 jab. You debuff your enemy, you weaken your enemy, then boom, with the skill damage, you hit that right hook. But with that skill damage, the only thing that you are depending is that big right hook, right? You either get it or not. So the consistency, I feel like, is not there. That's why I think it is still a nerf, but it's better than I expected, because I didn't know that it actually works with, AoE and all that. But still, I think it is a nerf. So Duke, another question: would you include Sargon in your top one, your only infantry pair?
No, I don't think I'd ever do that.
Is it still Guan Scipio?
Just because Guan and Scipio both have more field value. You can obviously they both carry fantastic debuffs, and that's really what gives them the staying power. You want silences, you want that area of effect health debuff, and apart from that, they just deal more damage, and you'll generally get more kills from them. So I think I can't really think of too many circumstances where you'd want to swap out Sargon for a single march for those two, but for 2 marches, absolutely. Yeah, you could bring in Sargon.
Perfect. Shappy?
Yeah, I personally am running Guan Scipio right now, and I don't see that changing. There are a couple reasons. I think for me, a lot of the time in KVK, I tend to damn near zero myself. I'm sure everyone else here does too. The issue with that is I end up running like 3 marches instead of the 7 that in theory I should be able to run. If I'm only running 3 marches and Sargon's one of them, that debuff is not adding enough value for me to actually run him and then be trying to heal, because he's not dealing the damage that I need. I think with Guan Scipio, I'm putting out a lot more damage and I'm putting it out faster. And I can also run away easily. Guan is not necessarily going to be insta-targeted. I do think Sargon likely will, because A, you can see that he's adding that debuff, at least if he's like Tamiris. And B, Sargon's not really all that tanky compared to the existing commanders.
I see. Okay. Rexy?
I'm gonna have to agree with both Duke and Shappy here, because Guan Scipio is just, I mean, it's the closest we got as infantry players to Nevsky Joan, and Sargon is sadly just a tier below. Sure, team value, if that's what you want, go ahead, build your team dream comp, but single march, you're not gonna replace Guan Scipio.
Do you agree, Psych, or do you disagree?
Well, I would just add one caveat here, which is I do think that Guan Scipio is probably the best single infantry march. I still think Scipio is probably the single best open field commander. I know some people will say it's Nevsky. I still think it's I think it's Scipio. I actually think it's Scipio or Joan. But anyway, that's a different debate. But so I think I would still run Guan Scipio. The AoE silence is just too good. But the exception I would add is that if you say I'm only going to bring 1 infantry march out right now because I'm going to go swarm a flag, then I probably would bring Guan with Sargon.
Of course, for swarming, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and about this debate, by the way, do you agree that CPO is better than Nevsky or Joan? Shappy, you're shaking your head.
I really, really like Nevsky. I also think that there is a value for low spenders in the ability to run away quickly. I started as a cav player, and that was really, really appealing to me because I couldn't stay on the field with the big kids with all their max equipment and the 450k troops. And so having Nevsky allowed me to do a fair bit of damage, and then when I'm targeted, I can run or pop out and then pop back in and still continue to do damage. So personally, I'm a Nevsky fanboy. That said, I do have Nevsky and Scipio max because they're both exceptional commanders.
Yeah, Duke.
Well, I think Joan definitely gave Nevsky a lot more purpose. Obviously, he was amazing before because you rally with him. He's great on the open field. You can even garrison with him. But I guess you could say in some way it's between the two, but with Scipio, he definitely in the open field, he kind of ticks all the boxes, right? He's AoE, he debuffs, he does fantastic damage, he's great at getting kills. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer between those three. Yeah.
Rex, Nevsky, or Scipio, or maybe even Joan of Arc.
Sorry,
Rex,
do you?
I think it's-
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay. I think my favorite is gonna have to be CPU here, because I the amount of tearing you just do by removing people's health and an expertise CPO is just gonna get value from every single one out there that which everybody is pretty much running. So you're constantly gonna be getting a quick skill cycle because silences are going off everywhere.
Mhm.
So you're amplifying even if you don't have a Horn of Fury, you're just clapping people faster because of everybody else's guans, which is something that I want to comment on you, PsychOut, when you said of storming the flag. I would have said, maybe one, maybe two Sargons for that earlier, but still have those Guan CPOs because you are nuking faster because of that extra rage gain, which people think like 5551 CPO is fine. Not really. Not really. Expertise and
No,
you're gonna
max
enjoy that
or
extra
infantry.
damage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of CPO for swarming, actually. He does the debuff, but you can also get that debuff from Gilgamesh. I think for swarming marches, I would stay away from CPO. I mean, I guess if you're there at the flag, you can go ahead and swarm with it, but I personally don't really like swarming with CPO. I get the idea behind the Guans, but if you've got enough Guans swarming, that thing's going to be forever silenced anyway. So you're not too worried about cycling that much faster. So yeah, I still think it's for me it's between Joan and CPO for best open field commander. I put such a premium on AOE and buffing other nearby marches. So that was one thing Duke did mention, is that CPO also gives a shield to nearby marches too.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty big. So my next question is, Duke, who should invest on Sargon? Let's talk about this one first. Who should invest on Sargon?
So I would just say, if you're a player that's entering Season of Conquest and you're just starting, sort of like getting your high DPS commanders, this isn't really the commander for you. And if you haven't already invested in Nevsky, Jones, Scipio, you should do those first.
Yeah.
So Sargon is kind of like, just an accessory to amp out your lineup if you run multiple infantry marches. But his main utility is going to be rally, I think, at the end of the day. So for most players, he just doesn't offer a lot. I think there's other field upgrades you could get before him.
Shappy?
So, yeah.
Shappy?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't think he's a go-to investment for infantry, at least not for your first infantry commander. I do think if you're rolling, 5 marches of infantry, you're gonna want to max him because he's a newer commander and he does have that debuff. But I think if you have 1 march or maybe even 2, I don't necessarily think I would invest in him. The question I would ask is, if you do want to preserve your Guan Scipio, who are you putting with him? Because there may be that conversation around, if you have Herald maxed,
Too beautiful. Sorry.
who do you use?
Did you see 12? I thought you went for a run, but you're in a car.
No, we're driving back. So we went to a run at the park, and I'm an old man now, so I couldn't run it as fast as I thought I did.
Okay, welcome.
Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, Shappy, please keep going.
Oh, yeah. So I was just saying, I don't necessarily think that he is the best investment, especially if you're just getting into infantry. I would be curious for those that are running, Alex Herald or Martel Herald right now, if there's a value in investing in Sargon, because that was my initial impression of like, hey, if you have Herald, you can insta-proc some skills and be a little tanky. I'd be curious to hear what the rest of the crew thinks. But to answer the original question, no, I don't think he'd be my go-to investment if you're just getting into infantry.
Rex?
Yeah,
I would.
You first.
I would say anyone who is in a position where you're considering a secondary for Guan that isn't Scipio for whatever reason, like
Mhm.
you know how people used to say or still do, Guan Leo, 5-5-1-1 Leo, and then you can throw out the March.
Mhm.
I would put Sargon over Leo. That's in the situation that I would put him. However, and that's at like 5-5-1-1 or 5-5-1-0, I guess, if you want to play around with that. But I wouldn't put him above the previous release commanders, which is, as mentioned, it's the Nevsky, it's the Joan, it's the Boudica, all of that. Even William, honestly, just get him because he's going to
Yeah.
bring you so much more value to the whole
Yeah,
team.
for sure.
So if you want to skimp out and you want to, go into a little bit of a niche, like help the team and, not go for Leo, then sure. But otherwise, no, like go for the other ones first.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking when I first saw Sargon. Because like I think he's a fine commander and he's a fine debuffer. I think he kind of takes the place of Tommy if you're running like a 6 or a 7. But like if you're rocking like because to go for a second infantry march, like people are talking and they're like, oh well, you invest in Sargon and then you can break up your Guan and Scipio. But the thing is like you're not just investing in Sargon. You also have to get like a whole new infantry set, right? Versus
Yeah.
like you got your cavalry stuff, your Nevsky Joan, you got your X-Men William, you got your Budapest Misha, maybe your Service Press G, but you've got all of those made. Making a second, if you already have a second infantry set, then maybe you can think about it. But if you don't already have that made, there's no shot you're this over like Nevsky Joan or like Budapest Misha or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Psych, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think I agree with what Duke initially said, which is that it's probably not something if I was just coming into the season of Conquest, I would want to prioritize. I'm just looking in terms of infantry, I would certainly prioritize, if I'm, again, just getting into season of Conquest, Guan and CPO over that. But I would also prioritize Nevsky, Joan, Boudica Prime. I would prioritize all of those over Sargon too. So I think he's certainly a playable commander, but I would say it disappoints what we expected when we first heard, the announcement about, we're going to put out a Nevsky level infantry commander.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
that was a lie. That was a lie. I think we can universally agree that was.
Yeah.
We got teased.
He's good, but he's good in the same way that like Trajan is a great commander, right? It's just like, if you're first, second, third, even like fourth March, like I'm never like, oh, you should go for Trajan. Like when you have like 6 or 7, like Trajan starts to become really awesome, much in the same way that like Tomyrus and Sargon starts to become awesome. But it's like until you have those, the only way that ICF could be really good would be if everybody really like drinks the Kool-Aid on Sargon. There's like 50 on the field, and then you can start to proc everybody's like 10 stacks odd, right? You can get away with those kills. Then it might be okay. But then you get yourself in the Bacall Herald or the AT situation where people look at the kills on that command and they're like, hey, like, should you really be having these type of KP on this command? You start that one bonus.
Well, Inch, I would also ask in that situation, though, right? Would you take 15 Trajans over 15 Sargons? I don't know. I might.
I think I'd rather have 15. I probably, I guess that's a tough one. I might rather have 15 Sargons personally, just because all he has to do is proc it, and he procs on the secondary AoE, right? So anybody that is even adjacent to, so if it's like Sargon, obviously it's not a March, but if it's Sargon YSG, the YSG would proc odd on people, right? With the ability.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, if you've got Sargon like Scipio and they're like dropping odd everywhere, because Trajan is debuffing one person, but Trajan's also getting himself targeted and basically immediately dying. But if you put Sargon with somebody where he's not going to immediately die, like you're going to get more debuffs. I think I'd rather have him than Trajan, but I think they both have their uses. And they also stack, so I mean, you don't always have to choose one or the other.
So another question,
Extreme true.
Duke. So what is the primary roles of Sargon?
The primary roles of Sargon?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that kind of comes down to, primarily I think he'll be used for rallying. I mean, we've speculated a little on will he be an effective garrison. I kind of just want to see reports on that because not much of his kit gets taken away in flags. I think just the 10% defense, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so theoretically, Flavius Sargon should work kind of like KVK2 YSG Tommy, just in, fast skill cycles, and is also debuffing the rally. That would be, comparable to Flav Scipio, where, really does great damage against the rally, though won't hold as well in a flag swarm.
Agree.
I wouldn't do Zeno Sargon at all, but there could be some utility there. Primarily rally with Tariq. I think that's going to be very strong, but we'll have to wait a few more days to see some of those reports. And yeah, he'll definitely have a role in swarming. What's nice about him compared to a lot of the debuffing commanders that you have is that he has a little bit more tankiness, so I think it won't be quite as excruciating reports, but swarming things, you're just kind of in for a bad report, however you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, Shappy, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree, and I'm curious about the rally. I think for Garrison, that's probably a no-go. I do think there's better synergy with Flavius Scipio, and even then, that's probably not my go-to Garrison. So I think he's going to be rally with Tariq. I think the question is that really going to be better than the alternatives of, a Henry rally? Because these days, it seems like the Garrisons are kind of agnostic to the rally, at least in this last KVK. I mean, you throw a Henry at anything and you were fine. But we'll have to see. I'm curious what the tests show and how swarm-proof this pair really is.
Yeah, Rex, you already mentioned about Ark of Osiris, right? What else?
So it becomes an interesting situation when we start talking about the whole swarm meta builds or whatever you want to call it, because some people are starting to turn their accounts into swarming accounts, like bigger players especially. And Sargon could be an interesting case where you want to build him for swarming flags, or I guess fortresses as well if you really want to, throw away your troops. But you might not want to actually have his fourth skill at that point, which I would be interested to see if you have a couple of those going and permanently put 30%, because some flag storms can go for a while, and constantly having 30% skill damage increase, that's going to be nuts. Or skill damage taken, especially if you have, these more powerful rallies of Boudicca's and, Henry's and Nevsky's and all of that hitting a rally or hitting a flag. That's going to be a lot of extra damage. But for overall use, I don't see it. I don't see it for field.
12?
That's like for your average players. But Ark of Osiris, yes. And for fights that you full send. Not fights where you backwards and forwards, tippy-toeing. Like, I can't see it.
Yeah, me neither. 12? You were saying something?
Yeah, I was gonna say under like really optimal situations, like in terms of like you can actually call everybody back from like the rally, or any kind of situation like that. You can try and make the 5-5-5-0 work. I think for like maybe like heavy hitter Imperium kingdoms or like really lean kingdoms where you have like a great amount of control within your coalition, that might make sense. It's just like it only takes one dude with one on the last skill to like absolutely demolish that. So I mean, if you're in a condition where like you're swarming the fort and like maybe you have like 3 guys that are swarmers and they're just gonna do their whole thing, you could try and make it work. But man, if you're in like any kind of like B or C kingdom, you're gonna have people that run right past you. You got your 30%. You're like, this is great, and then they're gonna cash in it for like 1,000 damage, and you're gonna just cry.
That's true.
Even A kingdoms have that. I think that's a very real possibility.
I have a very idealistic thought of how a rank A Imperium kingdoms are supposed to work. So don't break that for me.
Keep it, please.
Psych, what do you think? The main role for Sargon?
Yeah, I do think if you have 2 infantry marches, you're gonna include him in there at some point. Again, it's very difficult for me to understand the trials of someone who has limited gold heads. So I don't really know exactly what that's exactly like. So like if you're sitting there and you already have 2 infantry marches because you have Pakal Herald or something like that, I don't know if I would really say, oh, you need to go get Sargon to make this your second infantry march. But I think if you're not running 2 infantry marches and you plan to run 2 infantry marches, you're going to include him in your open field setup. I absolutely think we're going to see him in those sort of full send Osiris League things. He's just going to be there
for sure.
And then the other main role, the biggest role I think he's going to have is actually in swarming. I think the rally stuff is interesting. I'm still I'm a little skeptical of whether that rally is going to be better than some of the options we have now. The damage to cavalry that Trieg's doing. I mean, if you got those Jadwiga garrisons, I think it makes a lot of sense. But for sure, you're going to see him on swarms. The swarm teams are going to be using Sargon.
Yeah. So
Yeah, well, I
Will
mean,
it be 5550 or 5 or expertise?
I just expertise it. To hell with it.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, because if you, I think personally, I think Call Herald, I think it's a little remedial. I'm not gonna lie to you, but like much in the same way that like Attila Takeda, like you got to repurpose Attila with Nevsky. I think maybe you get to repurpose Herald with Sargon, and like that can kind of be the trade off. So if you already have, because my thing is like if you have 2 infantry marches, that doesn't really say much to me. But if you have 2 legendary infantry sets of gear and you have Herald already, then it's like, well, or you have Alex already. It's like, okay, Sargon, Alex, Sargon, Herald. You could probably make it work, right? But it's like because I personally I think Call Herald's a mistake. You know, some people are truthers, but you know, if you've done it and you look back at the pairing and you're like, okay, I can't really use this in most situations. Well, I mean, you got Herald already, you got the infantry gear already. You know, you could probably make that work, but that's a specific situation, I guess. You know, I don't think I'm ever looking at like Scipio. I'm like, should I expertise Scipio or should I go for Herald or should I go for Sargon? It's like, come on, there's no, it's not close.
That is a question we get. So
all
like,
the time. I get that
joke,
question.
Yeah.
but we get it, and we're like, yeah.
Yeah, it's
speechless. Okay.
I think what I've been
Yeah, please go
what
ahead.
I've been seeing a lot is a lot of people asking, should they bench their Guans for Sargon? And that's kind of like my main thing right now is trying to let people know that they probably shouldn't invest 700 heads in a Guan replacement. That's if it's Sargon.
Well, I mean, because there's 2 things. Like one, like your Guan at 5155 for 310 sculptures is probably going to do a better job. And like number 2, like we see all of these like crazy duels, and they're like, oh, like look at all these reports, and it's like I'm sure like a 1v1 duelist is doing really well in 1v1 duels. And it's like I'm sure like if I've got my buddy next to me and I want my buddy to either silence everybody in front of me or to debuff them. I think debuffs are great. That Guan silence on the field is crazy. It's so good. There's no shot that I look at my alliance members. I'm like, okay, guys, let's all get more odd stacks. Let's do Sargon. Like, I want everybody silenced. Every single time I see a Guan ability, I'm like, sweet, I'm safe for another 3 seconds. Right? The Joe Nevsky terror gets to be held back for at least a little bit longer. And then everybody's going to swap on Sargon, and suddenly my marches are going to start disappearing again.
Yeah, I think like the main thing, like I feel like the main disadvantage of Sargon is that we already made a live stream with Duke. The thing is, it's not consistent because it's a 5-second skill, right? And in 1v1 test, it doesn't have to be 1v1. Even if it's 5v5, it's simply fight to death. So the main disadvantage of Sargon is not there because nobody is running away from you, right? So every single time you are going to get the full benefit of that skill. That's why even 1v1, 5v5 doesn't matter. The testings for these commanders could be very misleading. That's my main problem with the testings. And people are saying like these reports are crazy and all that. I mean, obviously it will be crazy because every single time, like a rally, you are getting the full benefit of that skill because you are fighting to death. Nobody is running from you. You are not switching targets. You are not retreating back. So it's not the real KVK scenario. By the way, I was going to ask this question when 12 talked about it. Let's say you have 4 infantry commanders, right? Guan, CPO, Herald, Alex. Duke, I'm going to start with you again. Which one would you bench for Sargon, and what would your 2 pair look like?
I think I bench. I don't like Herald personally. He's okay, but I hate getting hit. If you guys use PC version, y'all already know the retreat key. Y'all have 4-piece infantry set. Y'all are dipping, right? Like if I see, like I look at my individual marches because I think KVK 2, KVK 3 before my stock, I fought with multiple marches, right? I just hotkey the one that's getting hit. I press the F key, I pull him back into my own ball, and then I hit him with the rest of my marches, right? There's no spot where I'm like, yes, like I would like to be punched in the head here, you know? So like I'd rather have Alex. The 30% debuff is still like really good regardless of what KVK you're in. I think I'm running it like Sargon Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. Back to 12-inch PvP.
That was. I'm sorry. I thought you said 12-inch. My bad, boy.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Duke.
I was interested in what he had to say. Sorry, what was the question again?
It was, let's say you have Guan, CPO, Herald, Alex. Which one would you bench for Sargon? And what's your top 2 infantry pairs with those 5 commanders, including Sargon?
I hate this question.
I know.
So I will say, at this point, I still kind of like Alex's debuff a little more than Sargon's. I think it's a little consistent, and doing 30% all damage immediately kind of has more of an impact.
Mhm.
But I would probably bench Alex for Sargon. I would not. That's a very small. That's a small upgrade, though.
Mhm.
Like smaller than it reasonably should be for a Gen 2 commander and a Gen 7 commander.
So
Because
Spartan-
you're getting better damage and you're swapping out, but it's slower and the debuff doesn't hit quite as hard in the field. Definitely, you'll notice it more in structures, but yeah, it'll do more damage. It'll trade better, but it's not necessarily a better debuff, which is kind of what his primary role is.
Yeah.
So yeah, Guan, Scipio, Herald, and Sargon.
Shappy?
We'll probably need to wait from the museum too.
Yeah, I guess the question I have when you're asking this question is you're assuming that you have all 5 maxed, right?
Yeah, of course.
I would kind of flip it on its head and be like, okay, if you have Alex Herald and you have Guan Scipio, are you maxing Sargon? Because I think for me, I probably wouldn't. With that Alex museum buff coming sometime when Lilith finally decides to release it, I think that's 690 heads that can totally be used elsewhere. And if you're the average account, you probably don't have Boudica, Nevsky, Joan, Scipio all maxed yet.
Yeah.
And I just think if you already have two infantry marches and both marches are pretty good, I don't think I would invest in Sargon.
Yeah,
If
actually.
I already have it maxed,
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry.
if I already have it maxed, then sure, bench Alex at least until the museum buff comes.
Mhm.
But I think otherwise, if I don't have it maxed, which currently I don't, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah. So I had some free time at work today, so I made a specific flow chart for Sargon, right? When should you invest? Are you a low spender? If no, don't invest. If yes, I do that, do this. And the last step was, do you have the luxury to bench a max commander? And this comes to the thing that you say. If you already have Herald, because I assume that you already have Guan and CPO max, like do you have the luxury to bench a max Alex or to bench a max Herald? I don't know. Probably not for most low spenders. Rexy, same question for you. Your top 2 pairs and which one would you bench?
I'm gonna probably go. I'm gonna go against you guys here and say that I would actually bench Harold, on the premise that you are looking at max commanders, and you're probably running something else in your lineup as well, and you're looking to win the fight, not the trade. Which, if you're looking to win the trade, smack on a Herald, and you're basically telling, as I told an infantry fortress before, when you have a Herald or something else in front of him, you're basically pointing at kill that guy, because people don't want to touch Herald. So for that, I would say Sargon Alex. Your individual march there might not do so well, but I wouldn't say that if you have, if you don't have, sculpture issues, like apparently, PsychOut was saying, he doesn't live in that world, he can just max everything, that's fine. Then go ahead, max him, and you pair him with however you want. You can even do one Sargon, Herald CPO if you want, go ham. But I think the Alex debuff is actually, it is still, like, for an infantry player, too good to just say goodbye to even now. Like, I know people are saying that Alex is weak, but man, does he work when you hit people with that debuff and, skill cycle comes in, and which I will have to say, you need to have Horn and Feral Nature on this Sargon March. Otherwise, the Alex and everything, it loses value. So if you don't have that, go Harold, Sargon, or whatever. You know.
Yeah. 12.
Yeah, I think it's a good candidate for drums too.
Drums just seem awesome in general. Like I remember I was like, oh, like I'll pick up horn first. And I'm like, no, drums looks good. And I was looking at the numbers, and obviously everything gives rage now. I don't know, drums. And drums, hey, I like them.
No drums.
Yep.
You don't have to pay any coins for them either.
It's free. 12.
It's basically free.
What's your two pairs then?
Sorry, what was that?
For two pairs, Psych or
my
12.
2 pairs. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm definitely still going with Guan with how did I have this? Guan with Alex and Sargon with CPO. Sargon with CPO. I would put take Harold out. And again, I think Shappy's point is right. A lot of people might not be in that situation. I think if you're in that situation where you already have those other 4 maxed, you may just say I'm going to pass on Sargon for now. I mentioned earlier Guan Sargon as a swarming march, and I still think it is a good swarming march. But in the past, what I've always done is swapped out CPO when I'm going to go swarm, and I actually swarm with Guan Alex because of that debuff. I think that actually may still be a better swarming march than Guan Sargon. I think it depends on how many Sargons are swarming.
Yeah.
Probably just want one Alex.
Do you guys does Harold show up in Bastions at all? A weird question, but I mean
he does.
Yes,
yeah.
but his 4th skill doesn't work, so he's useless.
Well, because I was about to say, like, if I had a limited amount of sculptures, I'm not saying Alex is the best expertise, but like the Alex Bastions are nuts. Like the Alex 2nd skill, like you're never getting your damage reduced, like you're always doing on hit, like just in terms of like other value as well. Like I don't even know if I would tell anybody to like do anything with Harold. Like in the 4 pair, like
Well,
the museum buff for Alex is 5% attack. What they say.
That's it.
When did they say that?
Buff is 5%. Oh! I was like, oh my god.
Psych is dropping the news.
Oh god.
Alexander Museum
No, I
leaks.
think for what it's worth, I think Harold has a really valuable damage amp that comes out with certain commanders, and I like that he rages pretty quickly with his 4th skill in Feral Nature. It depends on your setup, and just like 12-inch, I'll say your point earlier with you have to like hit Harold to get the value. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think with his 3rd skill and like his 4th procs, he deals a lot of damage if you leave him alone, which most people do nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he's really, in like your top meta setup, but if you have him, he's still a great field commander to just sort of have in the field, and he will do damage. I have a special place for Harold. I've used him for a long time, but I don't disagree with that. Sargon Alex, like keeping Alex over Harold is a good call also.
Yeah, I mean, he looks okay. Like brushing up on my Harold lore. I personally I don't have him. I'm a little biased. I'm an Alex truther. I see it's probably splitting hairs, honestly, but it's okay.
I can tell you it just I didn't think I was going to bench Harold for Alex, though I might. When Sargon first came out, I thought his stacks were with normal attacks. I was pretty certain I was going to bench Harold and it was going to be Sargon Alex because that march looked insane. Now it looks a little less interesting, but it's still good. And I guess you have the procs. But I'm.
Aren't you worried about being targeted with either of those primaries? Like if I see an Alex in the field or if I see a Sargon in the field.
Oh, I never use Alex primary.
Oh yeah, of course. You'd run the skill tree.
Yeah, you can. It's just I want the skill tree with Sargon. I'm not worried about being hit, just because I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, trying to predict what people will hit is a little tricky because that just depends on what the other player wants to hit. Sometimes they'll hit things that are really out of position. Sometimes, most of the time, they'll gun for the commander they really want to take off the field. I'll be honest, most of the time that's Boudica. Like, Boudica is a magnet for people targeting, and that's also Guan, that's XY.
Yeah.
I don't think Sargon shoots to the top of that list. I think Sargon marches are going to run a little on the tankier side, so they take a little bit longer. And I'll be honest, his debuff is not the first one I want to take off. He kind of just
for me,
like,
it's always Trajan.
yeah.
Like that's the if I see Trajan on the field, like I'm on it every
See,
single time.
I ignore Trajan. I'd rather hit an XY or a Guan.
Duke, you're not going for the easy kills. Inch and I are going for the easy kills.
I see a dude literally debuff himself. He's like, I'm taking 25% more damage right now. Hey, he wants to be hit. He's begging. He's saying, please hit me. Dude, and sometimes it's like Trajan Ethelflag. Come on.
I don't know. I mean, XY William goes down pretty quickly, and I've gotten some fantastic it's pretty nice watching that one melt. So
also, happy birthday to Spartan. I was supposed to say that earlier.
Yo, thank you so much. Thank you so much, 12.
Oh, what?
We're here for your birthday.
I'm glad I wasn't. I'm glad I wasn't the last one. Sorry,
you're doing this.
Happy birthday.
You're doing this on your birthday.
But it is almost 2 a.m. here, so the actual party is tomorrow. So yeah, we good.
He got his priorities straight, ROK, maintenance was all day, You gotta get that stuff out, do the community a favor.
Who cares about birthdays?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Just getting older.
Okay, so
You know what I think Spartan would like?
Yeah.
Probably a like and a subscribe.
Yeah,
that
that would be great.
button,
Yeah,
boys.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So another question is, do we all agree that we don't have a lot of value when it comes to Sargon's debuff for our first skill cycle, right? That's correct?
Yeah, you only get like one or two procs.
My question is, how many... Sorry, did I interrupt something? Rexy, you were saying something?
Yeah, I just want to briefly touch on something that we kind of skirted around earlier. And that was the whole thing about his skill cycle. That, it's not instant, it's not like Boudica, it is not like Tamaris. And it kind of makes sense, because if it was, then, it would be like, basically Bjorn's active, instantly applying a debuff like Boudica. So they had to make something different. It's just that different part is kind of, for an individual March perspective, bad, but for the whole team, it makes sense. And it made it a bit of interesting of like future pairings, like whatever else AoE leadership we get. We were joking about on the infantry Discord, like, hey, Sargon Theo, if you got nothing else, you just throw that out there and help the team, which, I'm not saying people should be doing. If you're a whale, have fun. If that's like your 7th March and it's your first SOC and, whatever, go ham. But it's kind of, it makes you excited for what's coming next in the leadership and the infantry department, although that'll be, a year. Well, leadership is sooner, but and it's kind of sad to see that the normal attack wasn't the thing. But I'm also, I'm hoping to maybe see some different variation of application for skill damage coming forward. If that is, bursts or something, we'll see. But that might be something they're toying with, because they made a commander that is basically reliant on skill damage that is not proc, but some other modifier that causes it. We have Moctezuma's like self heal, right? Well, and you have what's they called, the debuff from Gilgamesh. So maybe we'll see that. And I hope
I'm like one of the only people who's gonna be like, oh yeah, the Mach self heal. Like, I love Mach. They use them all the time.
He actually has a 5551 Moctezuma.
Yeah, I do. I use him all the time. He's good, I swear.
So I was going to say that this question was actually specifically for your average player. How many times? Because 90% of players usually open field fighters rather than ralliers or swarmers. So how many times are you able to apply, to get to that second skill cycle on one target in the open field KVKs? I mean, for me,
it
it's like,
depends on how you fight.
For me, it's like 1 out of 10 times, because I get that first skill cycle. Maybe if I'm not targeted yet, I hit for a few more seconds and then I just retreat.
I mean, that's kind of the same thing with Trajan and a lot of buff marches, right? Like, if you're getting your primary value out of that first skill cycle, but it just depends on how you fight. If you're on the front lines targeting things and going from march to march and not losing your rage connection, then yeah, you'll get a lot of value out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends because like if you're running Sargon Alex or like Herald Sargon or Sargon, however you're running that, right? That might be difficult to stick with, but if it's like a 7th March, because I know some people are running Richard Tommy just to try and get the debuff out. If you're running like
What?
Richard
Someone
Sargon
on this
with the
call?
expertise, over you guys. Okay, my bad. But I've heard of it. But like realistically, if you have like a pretty good slower, I mean, you can try and stick to them, but. I mean, you're trying to like squeeze blood out of a stone. Especially just trying to get his first ability like just out on somebody. Period is hard enough. Let alone getting to the 2nd cycle of it.
Yeah.
Do we think that's the real problem with him? Like, everyone in my kingdom is like, oh yeah, you can just run away. But like, real talk, in a murder ball, are they going to be able to run away? Like, do we think that's actually a problem?
I really think
who are you
so.
trying to? If you're trying to hit the XY William, if you're trying to hit the Joan Nevsky, they're gone. They hit the retreat key and they have disappeared by the
Even
time
in murder ball?
you're trying to get that. I think so. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on where your city's positioned, but I mean, if your retreat key is going to take you backwards, then there's no way you're going to touch them. Because I'm using Guan Sip and I'm outrunning cavalry with my retreat key, so I don't know how you're going to catch the cavalry with infantry.
Yeah. Psych, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think for me the real problem is a little different from that one. I mean, I designed my 5-6 marches, in some rare cases 7 marches to delete that march in one skill cycle, and so for me that's why Sargon is a bit of a problem, because by the time he gets through, which by the way, it's 2,500 active skill damage. Which is it's the same as Honda's, right? It's the highest in the game.
Yeah.
The problem is it's over 5 seconds, right? But by the time I get to the end of that 5 seconds, that march is already gone. That's the problem for me. It's like, well, the march isn't there anymore, so now I'm not getting that value out of that at all. Actually.
Because it's already dead.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
What's that?
Because it's already dead.
Yeah, it's already gone. It's already dead. I've already deleted it.
One thing I guess that's you can make a case for is just that if you are good with your marches and are able to maybe sometimes you'll build up your rage and then swap to another target, dump all your skills, then you can get that 6 second start, the 6 seconds you need to unleash all of Sargon's damage.
Well, then you're missing the whole 30% debuff though.
Yeah.
You're missing
because that's
what?
Because you have to debuff the target. If the target dies and then you switch to another target, then the whole
that's true. Right? But he's saying that first target you're hitting is you're gonna start with the skill right on that target. First 5 seconds you're already skilling on it. And that's absolutely true. And in OL mid fights, that's exactly what's gonna happen. Is you're gonna see people doing that.
Yeah. So when you switch the target, you will keep hitting the skill to the next target, right?
Yeah. Because you're rage loading onto the next one. It's just like. If he's meant to do 25 into the 30%, if that's like his big thing, you're not doing the 25 into the 30%.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But a problem Sargon will have in this, and it's going to be a bigger problem the smaller the fights go, is he's going to rage reset a lot if you don't have an AoE secondary to him, or if you are not being hit by AoE. So, sometimes when you kill a target and you're in the middle of a, big ball or whatever, but you're not getting hit, and 2 out of your 5 marches rage reset, and you're like, damn, like I can't nuke the next target.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why actually a secondary that is AoE to Sargon is going to be probably a lot more appealing than people think initially. Because, you try to rage jump from target. Sometimes, with a March Indian, you have to walk for a little bit and your target dies and you're like, oh, now I lost the rage or my Guan Sippy or whatever. And you're like, yeah, well, tough luck. That's going to be a big problem for this as well, I think.
Aren't people also going to run into issues with Sargon in that damage factor is over 5 turns? And as you lose number of troops in that march, your damage factor is going to... So even though it's 2,500, it's really not.
Right. Yeah, well, although it's an interesting comparison to Honda because it's going to take you forever to actually fire Honda's skill anyway. So I don't know which one's really worse.
So I'll throw a
I
question to you guys. You're
personally,
kind
I
of.
think.
I
Well,
just quickly want to
say
ask if
personally,
you
I
guys
just
would have
like.
preferred. Oh, go ahead, Duke.
No, you go first. No, I just said I dislike Honda's or Sargon's more just because it takes forever.
So
Okay.
PsychOut, I'll start with you on this real quickly.
But they're both.
Would you prefer Sargon if you flipped the skill? If you instantly started with 250 and then you had to have like 10 seconds of cooldown, like.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, I mean, if he was doing 2,500 damage factor on a 1,000 rage, is that what you're saying?
No. So let's say that he, let's forget about rage for a little bit, but let's just say that he started with a 500. First 5 rounds, he touches somebody, he starts dealing this damage factor. I think that would have made him a
That would
lot
be a
more
pretty big
appealing.
buff. Yeah, it would make him very strong.
Yeah.
That'd be
For
huge.
sure.
Yeah, that'd be nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
'Cause
love a
then he'd be a
commander like
skirmisher,
that. Yeah.
which is great. But
I
he's-
suspect they actually started him in a different way, and that they found out that in testing, he was just too strong, and so they came up with this kind of weird way of spreading out the skill damage over 5 seconds and doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like CJ syndrome to me, where it's like CJ on paper, it's like, well, he just does a ton of damage, and it's like awesome, and it's like, okay, well, how long are you really realistically going to be in this fight for? And it's like, well, okay, less damage. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, just again with the 1v1 testing, just like CJ does really well in 1v1s, Sargon also does really well in 1v1s. So I think that's where a lot of this early hype for him is coming from. Just because, yeah, you're getting all the 2,500, you're letting him stack up. The rage in 1v1s is very inconsistent to what you actually get in the field because you're always getting, the march is always attacking you, so you're getting, just the right amount of counterattack and all that extra rage. You're not going to see that in the field as well.
For sure. And before we end the stream, I have one last question for everybody. Gonna start with Duke again. Can you rate Sargon out of 5 for your average open field player and high spender? 2 different ratings.
Oof. I don't know. I guess I'd have to think about where I rate everyone else. I mean, I'll interpret this question as like, who would I compare him to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd say he's comparable with Trajan, just in that open field support role.
Mm-hmm.
I would not rate him with Nevsky, Joan, Boudica, Scipio. I wouldn't rate him with Guan, William, and like even the older commanders that have still held up. Obviously, he's a good if you have a commander in your lineup like Navy Charles or someone who's not necessarily bringing a lot of support value, then he's an upgrade from there. But his debuff is comparable with Alex and Tamiris, but a little worse for just the field. I'd say he's probably 3 of 5, maybe 4 of 5 on the circumstances, but not a high priority.
Mm-hmm. But for high spenders, what do you say for high spenders?
For high spenders, then
yeah,
tweaking your lineup for 2 marches, sure, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Though he's really not super essential. But yeah, if you're looking to optimize your swarm lineup, if you're an OL player, yeah, you're gonna be grabbing this guy anyway. So
yeah.
He does have a role. It's just not something that I think most players will find as useful.
Agree. Shappy?
Yeah, I think for the average player, he's probably about a 3. Just because there are other commanders that I would work on first. I think if you are an all infantry main, sure, I do think he could be your second march. Maybe in that particular circumstance, He's up to a 4. He is not Nevsky, Joan, Boudica tier. He's not a 5-star commander in my personal opinion. I think where things get interesting is when you do get to that high spender category. And then he's, I don't know, probably your 5th or 6th march, which it starts to get interesting because when you're at that point, you are thinking a lot more about debuffs and synergy between all your marches. And at that point, you've already maxed Boudica, you've already maxed Nevsky, you've maxed Joan, right? You're that level of whale that you can do that. Then if you're talking about will he work for your 5th march, I'd say totally, right? Because you can afford that and your marches are on the field long enough that debuff is stacking. But I think for your average player, he's not who I would go to, especially if you're talking about all 3 troop types, not siege. Sorry. If you're going for all 3 troop types, I do think there are better commanders to max. Yeah,
I see. I'm gonna ask Rexy last because he's looking like, you peasants, you don't know the power of Sargon yet. Like, look at him, look at him. So I'm gonna go with PsychOut. Psych, what do you think?
I think for the average player, I'd put him at about a 3.5 out of 5. I sort of waffled between 3 and 4. I think for the high spender, 4.5 out of 5. I think he's not 5, but 4.5. I think that's exactly right. If you want to optimize what you're doing, if you're an OL player and you're committed to that, you're going to have to go get him. If you've maxed all the wheel commanders or all the useful wheel commanders and you're sitting on 1 million gems, I don't know anybody like that. You would just go ahead and spin the wheel anyway for him because why not? You're not doing anything else with those gems.
Yeah.
But I think for the average player, 3.5 is about right.
Yeah. 12.
He's honestly a really good commander. It's just like the S tier of commanders is like so full right now. It's like Nevsky, Joan. Like Joan, we thought Nevsky was insane. Then they released Joan. Scipio's out. Like Boudica's crazy. Like all of these marches are absolutely great. So is he a 4? I mean, kind of. It's just like I'd probably take William over him, but like they're kind of on the same bar. If this is like the S tier of like the Nevsky, Joan, Scipio, like he's probably on the A tier with William and a couple others and Trajan and stuff. And like he's good. It's just like you have so many marches to think of. It's like the reason why he's so good is because you're deeper into your bench once you've got there. And if you're not deeper into your bench yet, I mean, he's a duelist march, but for the same reason that I'd suggest AoE for like your 1 or 2 marches, I would suggest the same thing for your 1 or 2 marches. I mean, you're just not doing Sargon early, but I think he's obviously worth going for.
Rexy?
So, yeah, I'm gonna probably lower him a little bit, like saying that for your average player, he is probably actually more like a 2.5, maybe 2. But I'm basing this over the whole of infantry and obviously like infantry, I'm just gonna be honest, the competition isn't that high. It's overall like Constantine, Charles, Richard, like they have niche uses, right? Niche use cases, and he just adds to that. However, for your spenders, go ham. You max them and swarm whatever you want with that because you're gonna do a lot of damage and you're gonna help everybody else do damage as well. So add him to your Swiss Army knife lineup of like, hey, I'm just gonna pull out a 7th march that's already full crit gear and I can swarm this flag instantly, like no problem. Go ham because he will help you and everybody else to kill stuff. But and also I guess if you really despise apparently Nevsky Joan and you want to win that 1v1, apparently he can do it. I'm not saying he's always going to do it, but some people have been linking some reports and he's apparently able to win those duels. So if that's your hard on and gets you going, go for it. But otherwise, he's not on the priority list for most players.
I agree.
You think Sargon's better than Constantine? I beg to differ. Constantine's my definite S tier here. He's my 5-star commander.
Yeah, I'm not too scared of the Canyon lineup that hits me with my Constantine to start. So,
all right. If you guys have any questions, it's the perfect time to ask chat. Or if you have anything to say, please go ahead. Shappy 12, Psych, Rexy, Jake.
No, I mean it's
Oh, go for it.
I was just gonna say like, I think I often when people talk about like the average player, I have to pull myself out of like you guys, right? Because you guys are the type of people I'm talking to, especially the infantry Discord, like Rexian and Duke. Whenever I'm like, hey, like check out this gear, like check out this march, and they're like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. I mean, like technically it does suck compared to like the best of the best, but like, yeah, average player, yes, FTP. Because like when I say FTP, that is it's super stretched now. Yeah, you're right. Like you're the average player should never go for Sargon. It just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the average player has like 2 marches, so it's true. It's just like I'm like, yes, average player. We're gonna play for like 4 years, and we're going for like 5 or 6 marches. Okay, yeah. Rexian's probably he's on that. That 2.5. It's probably closer to Earth.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my rating was Sargon. I'm gonna show live stream to my I don't know if they can see it, but that flow chart I made, right? So for an average player to invest on Sargon, like look at things. Are you a free to play low spenders? Low spender? Okay. Do you already have top 3 marches max? Like, Nevsky, John, Guan, CPO? If the answer is no, then do not invest. If the answer is yes, are you an infantry main? So you are going to use at least 2 infantry marches. The answer is no, do not invest. If the answer is yes, do you already have the equipment to use with Sargon? If the answer is yes, okay, you may invest, but now, since you have the equipment, this means that you already have the 2nd infantry march, right? So you need to bench 1 commander. Do you have the luxury to bench one of these commanders? If the answer is yes, then go ahead and invest on Sargon. But, I mean, I don't know. My rating is, I guess, 2, so I have to agree with Rexy.
Yeah, well, it's like,
Yeah.
like, do you guys remember when Trajan came out and everybody's like, you guys, F2P, like, we have to go for Trajan. Like, I heard that everywhere.
Yes,
and then
I
they all went for
remember
Trajan,
certain
and like
people.
now they're fodder. Damia was a criminal with that, but like they were just fodder. And like now, whenever I see Trajan, I will watch out them. Right? There's like Trajan with T4, and they just disappear. And it's like, man, at least I was not the content creator that told you guys to go for Trajan, right? Because I like to think that I wouldn't have been on that hype train. Maybe I would have, right?
Yeah.
So, oh god.
Well, for what it's worth, the concept of the helpful free to play who brings like the one support march to follow the whale around and buff for him has been around as long as this game has been.
If only
Oh,
if there was.
Bring Attila, Takeda, and Harold. And
We need utility points. Where's our debuff points, our utility points, our tanking points? If we have some more
Yeah,
points,
it doesn't.
I always tell
It
people that.
definitely doesn't help your KVK contribution.
Like I'm always in every jumper, and they're always like, well, I just want to run these buffer marches, and like I'll start with like Ethel Joan, and then I'll go to like Trajan and Tommy, and it'll like work out so well. I'm like, dude, eventually, if we petition Rock enough, they might release like different stats. They might release like death kill points, utility points, tank points, sure. And if they will give you rewards based on your utility, then I think you could go for it. But in the world we live in, planet Earth, I was like, you better stay away from those buffers and debuffers, because they'll chew you up, they'll spit you out. They'll go 65 mil, and you did 2 million C kills this KVK. Sorry, buddy, it's over for you.
You either migrate
they
or you
track
get zeros.
stats like that in Nile KVK. They actually track it, like your with the skills. Not with everything, right? Not with like your drone buffing and stuff like that. But some of the skills that give like a skill damage increase taken debuff to enemies, that is tracked. So they have the capability to track some of this. It's just a matter of like if they're gonna allow us to actually see it. Because I would want to know how many people that I hit with a Scipio debuff during a whole KVK. That would be interesting to see. How many people suffered that, and then how many people maybe got follow up, but damage.
Wolf is gonna look at their watch and go, what did he say? Did you say delete death points? Yeah, we can remove the deads. That sounds great. That's a great idea. We'll do another 4 AP nerf after that. No more AP.
Well, there's a lot of data I would love to see, but it's unlikely we will. So.
Well, on behalf of all of us, I did want to thank Spartan for putting this together. I think in my interviews, I mentioned you that I really, really wanted to see the community working together better and more frequently, and you have definitely executed. So we all appreciate you. I think the community appreciates you. Happy birthday for sure.
Yo, thank you so much, Shappy. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for joining Rexy, Duke, Shappy, 12-inch, PsychOut. There will be a link to their channels, YouTubes, or Discords in the description. So make sure to go ahead and check them out. If it's a Discord, just join. If it's a YouTube channel, please, guys, go ahead and subscribe to them. And I guess we're going to end the stream now. And thank you so much for joining as a viewer. I see you guys on the next one. And goodbye.
Take it easy, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks everybody.